Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Side Credentials, episode 7. I am your co-host, Matt Burrows. I've got my other buddy, my co-host, Ben Mercer, dropping in. We're getting back to being consistent. This is great. Again, this is a kind of a side of the Essential Credentials podcast, which many of you have grown to know and love. But since they are not doing too many episodes, we wanted to stay consistent with this. And we've got a really cool topic to talk about today. And then we're going to drop into a couple of little side topics as well. But first of all, Ben, welcome. How was the weekend, and what are you looking forward to about this episode?
Weekend was good for me. Less card focused, more like I mentioned to you before we started, shopping for furniture focus, which is the farthest thing from cards for me. Although we did go antiquing, so you always have that hope in one of the booths, like, hey, is there going to be some random cards in here? And I actually just remembered there was one that had baseball cards, and they had just a whole bin of like 90, 91 tops and a bunch of 90 tops in there, and it was just thrown in a bin. I was like,
Right.
do I take the time to look through this on the off chance there's a Frank Thomas no name on front in here? And I didn't. But I was like, ooh, I left and I was like, this, I could have that story.
Right.
But I was like, chances are so slim, so I just convinced myself it wasn't worth it. But that was the only upside card wise for the weekend.
Okay. Nice.
How about you?
How about the episode? Well, yeah, I'll do that first then. Yeah, man, it was. It's definitely been, it's settling in more and more to the new gig. It's so hard to not think about cards even more. I was already passionate about trading cards in general, and so working within the industry and working for a company who has so much passion for the hobby as well. It's been very infectious. You know what I mean? Especially when you see people talk about stuff that's coming out. I've got a couple of cards in front of me that, at least one that I definitely wouldn't have had in front of me had I not started working here. So I think that's been great. I got my first bike, so I'm excited about that. But as far as cards go, yeah, man, my fire is burning as usual, and I'm really excited to hear about your experience with Greg on the other side of the table. This episode, is titled "A View from the Other Side," right? And that being on the dealer side of a table as opposed to being on the buyer's side. I think anybody, when they think of the National, they think of a local card show, they think of another big card show. I mean, you were in this mindset as a buyer. You're looking for specific things on the tops of tables. You're hoping to interact with a great seller so you can work a deal for some bulk. I mean, you never know who you're going to run into there. Maybe somebody else that's got cards you're looking for. But you guys actually set up a booth or set up a table and had your stuff laid out there, and your stories from day 1 to day 2 are going to be pretty interesting to hear about. So before we get started, anybody that drops in live, please say hello. We'll give you a shout out. And again, Ben is going to share some of his stories, and I'm going to have some questions for him about what it was like as a dealer. He and Greg both went to the Nashville Card Show, which is a pretty big card show.
Yeah, they do a big one 3 times a year. That's like 800 to 850 tables. So significant size, yeah.
Okay, so let's start with this question. Just going to kind of run this interview style, and we'll just kind of go quick answers, and then we'll get into a couple deep questions here. First of all, what made you and Greg decide that you wanted to be a dealer for the first time?
So it was actually Greg that went ahead and got the table, and he just told me about it. And he literally just told me it was because he wanted to have the experience of being on the other side of the table. He was like, I don't really have anything I want to sell. I don't necessarily have a plan to sell anything. I just want to be on that side and like talk to people, maybe put some things out so I can start a conversation with some folks. But he did it literally just for the experience of like, I'll pay for a table just for the experience of being on the other side. Like no plan to really like make money doing it. I was like, okay, it's a pretty expensive table. I told him I would just split it with him because I hadn't ever set up at a show before. Greg had when he was much, much younger, when he first was into cards. I think he was like saying he was 12, 13, something like that. He was setting up. So, I mean, a long time since he's set up as well. But I just really wanted the experience because I am, and it's maybe a bad habit, but me, when I go to a show, I am pretty focused on what I want. I have a pretty small list. I walk the show pretty quickly. And at this point, I've been to enough I can kind of quickly scan a table. Like if I'm a row back, I can scan a table and just not even need to really look at it.
Yep.
So even on a show like this big, 800 tables, I might actually talk to like 4. And
Wow.
really, when you're moving that fast, you're not really stopping and chatting with other people that are on your side of the table either. Like, oh, I heard you were looking for this kind of thing. Do you also collect? Like, you're kind of on a mission. Or at least that's the way I look at it. I'm here
Right.
to look and maybe find one of these things. And after I do that, maybe I'll look in some $5, $1 boxes, or I find a table that's got some, 90s, early 2000s stuff, or maybe they have some Ichiro in a table. So I know they might have some more stuff, whatever. I can talk with you guys about that.
Right.
But I'm very like mission focused when I go to a show. And so I wanted to do this because it puts me on the side of the table where I show up there in the morning and I now have to stay the whole time, or I feel obligated to stay the whole time.
Right.
So you're just going to see different people coming through, different people are going to stop. You're going to be forced to have conversation. You want to say hey to people and draw them into your table a little bit, because now you're in the position where you want to actually make people engage with you so they stick around a little longer and maybe pick something up. So it's the complete opposite almost of what I normally do at a show, which is boom, 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 mission, like blinders on, don't get distracted kind of thing.
For sure. Well, and I think we've all, or most of us, I think, that have been to a show have been curious about what it's like to be on that side of the table, to be on the dealer side of the table. Because for me, when I'm there, and I think you appreciate this as well, when you do find that table you want to stop at, you want to kind of get to know the person that's there, right? I mean, you're looking at their merchandise, and often the dealers want to have a conversation, just like Greg wanted to go there to meet people and to interact with them. You want to be able to initiate that as a buyer. So as the dealer, I'm sure you also were looking forward to buyers that interacted with you that way. So let's go into the first day here. You guys end up setting up, and Greg did have an essential credential sign, which was awesome that he ended up making.
Yep.
But the first day you were telling me you didn't really bring a ton of stuff to sell, because the idea was, hey, we'll just interact with people, right? So talk to me a little bit about what that first day was like, and what ended up happening that changed your approach to day 2.
So day 1, Greg really leaned into I'm going to bring some amazing pieces from my personal collection. So like some PMG, some 24 carats. I mean, some like big time grail cards, if that's your player, and set them up just to like draw people in.
Right.
And I had stuff that I was like, I basically already have this listed somewhere, or it's sitting in my box that's ready to list. I just need to take pictures and stuff. So like ready to go inventory that I'm put out. Nothing like really big that would, maybe the most expensive card I brought was like $250, and a couple of things that were like between 100 and 200, and then a lot of stuff that was like 40 to 80. And then I had a couple boxes. One was like prices marked $20 or less kind of stuff. And then basically like and then like a $1 to $2 box. It was just like flip through, get a stack, that kind of thing. But nothing. So Greg had insane bangers. So we had like one display case, and then my stuff kind of set on the side, like the boxes.
Okay.
And the display case was basically split of like insane bangers, but they're literally not for sale. Like he put a sign that said "not for sale."
Like his PMG, Barry, or Frank, or something.
So like crazy grail cards, and then right next to it, like a $40 Alex Verdugo autograph rookie. It's just like a weird, like the case didn't really make sense.
Right.
Like if you're walking by, and that's what we kind of started to pick up on. Like people would stop and be like, "Well, that's a cool PMG," and they would kind of stop and be like, "These other cards over here with prices like don't have anything, like there's no alignment here." Like I'm now confused as a buyer. Like, what am I looking for? What do I even ask these guys if they might have X? Because I can't get a pulse on this table at all.
Right.
So they kind of realized like there has to be stuff there that's for sale, something that's a grail, but it can't just be a bunch of grails that aren't for sale. Like maybe 1 or 2 things in the case that like aren't for sale, but I'm of the opinion, for me, technically everything is for sale at the right price.
I mean, yes.
So I'll put it in the case, and you can ask me about it, and I'm going to throw you a number, and you'll go, and I'll go, that's the number. But at least now we're talking like, yeah, I have that, but did you also see this in here? Right. Now you're kind of talking like, oh, what makes you love that card so much? So like day 2, it was Greg really decided I'm going to bring some stuff to like actually sell, like some stuff that I'm going to re-look through and say, all right, yeah, I guess so. I should wrap up day 1. So really that's how day 1 sort of ended. I think we sold together total like, I mean, we sold 240 and he sold like 70. It was just like not a lot of stuff and really not a lot of people like stopping. And I even had a free box because I was like, oh, I'll put a free box onto the side for like kids.
Right.
Another thing to know about card shows these days, if a kid is older than 7, they don't care about free anymore. They already know too much.
Right. They
Like,
don't.
For me, a free box when I was 7 years old going to a show would have been like, no way, I can have 10 of these just for free.
Yeah.
So I ended up giving some of those away to some kids, but they had to be like 5, 4-year-old kids.
Right. Now, so I mean, that's such an interesting thing too. I mean, it's a great lesson. I'm asking you these questions too because anybody that's going to watch this might think to themselves, "Hey, I've thought about setting up at a card show before, and what kind of things should I think of?" And you also mentioned too when you walked around, and then we'll get to day 2. When you walked around, you saw like more Ohtani cards than you ever thought was possible, right? It's a really interesting dynamic when a player is getting hot and that's the hot card. And that just floods all the tables. I feel like that takes away a little bit of the beauty of a card show because you want to see variety. You don't want to be seeing the same PSA 10 rookie from Topps in every single booth, So
that was actually the big takeaway from Friday too. Because Friday Greg and I both did like, I'll watch the table, you walk around, then I'll walk around. And
right.
I mean, it was a lot of really Ohtani and Victor Wembanyama, just like, and CJ Stroud for football. Like if you talk to people or you just walked around tables, it was just an overload of those. There would be a whole case of just Ohtani 2018 cards, different Stadium Club, the Topps, almost no 2018 autographs. Like those weren't out there anywhere. But maybe you'd see a refractor or something, but it was just like bulk Ohtani PSA 10s of kind of the lower end rookie cards everywhere. Any table had one. I had one I put out on Saturday.
Nice. There you
I was
go.
like, well, I'll put out one too.
Yeah. So, you guys kind of changed gears a little bit for day 2, right? You guys said, okay, you know what, this approach is probably not didn't feel satisfying, right? So you wanted to try to change the approach a little bit. So what was your mindset going into day 2 and how did you guys switch it up?
Yeah, because we both kind of talked towards the end of the day and went, okay, the goal here was to really get the experience of being behind the table and having people stop and talk with them and kind of figure out, like, get a different pulse of what people might be looking for when they stop and talk to you. And you have to something to draw them in. And we kind of didn't, I mean, because love Greg. Greg, like I said, has like killer cards, but again, some of the stuff was like Tim Salmon. So you see a, 24 karat and you see it's Tim Salmon, you're like, that's cool. But there aren't a lot of people also searching for that. He had people stop and look at the Barry Sanders stuff because he put out like a Barry Sanders PMG. People are going to stop and look at that. And then look right next to my stuff where I have a Jason Dominguez autograph. It's like $200. I'm like, I don't understand what's going on here. I'm confused.
Mm-hmm.
It was more like, hey, let's both go back, kind of flip through stuff, and maybe stuff we were on the bubble about selling, or like we were going to list but wanted to think about where we were going to price it, whatever. Like, go ahead and just pull that stuff, and we'll put that out. So, and then something to like really draw people in. So, the hack, one of the hacks I used for the second day was I brought my 1994 the Upper Deck Griffey Mantle dual autograph, the pack pulled version.
Okay,
it's a grail card of mine. It's a grail card for a lot of people, right? And you just don't even see them at shows. So I thought, okay, we'll put that in the middle of the case. I would actually sell it for crazy price. And when people ask, I'll say crazy price, but at least people are going to stop and look at that. One other person I had with the show on Friday, they took it out. So I had the only one at the show. So when people walk around, boom, there's one. You never see one.
So you got the main talking point in the middle of the case as opposed to day 1. Okay.
And then right above that, I put like the Flair showcase, the Legacy Jeter that I had right above that. So you have like a shiny card right above that. That's a different price point, but they're both horizontal. They kind of, you see one, then you see the other one right above it. And it just gives people like a second longer to stop. Oh, those are in here. What else is in this case? This is interesting now. And Greg did the same thing, brought some like, he brought like the Power Alley die cut Frank Thomas, which is another card that's like shiny, really cool. You don't see him because the die cuts were only the first 100 were die cut out of that. 250. Yeah, that's right. 50, yep. So again, just stuff that like you see it and it's not a crazy price, but it catches your eye. You want to see what else is in there. And then he mixed in some basketball stuff, mixed in a couple other football stuff that was like 200 to 300. He brought some Larry Bird autos. People stopped for Larry Bird autos.
Okay.
So we just made it like a little bit higher end, something that's like big that draws people to the case, and then other stuff that goes from that big grill that's interesting, but they actually might have the money for those.
Gotcha. I just want to say hello to Ray. Nice to have you in here, man. Welcome. So before you go on, I do want to talk about this. And I guess as a buyer, maybe you didn't think about this either. I know I didn't. But when you're looking at the cases, the cases that are just thrown together. There's just so much crap thrown in there because this person has so many cards. Good for them. But it's very hard to look through. Organized cases play a huge role if I'm going to stop. And I'm guessing you guys, as you talked about, really thought about that. What's going to grab the attention and then what's going to keep the attention, right? You got a card maybe that's not for sale unless somebody's going to offer a crazy amount, but then everything around it is for sale. So are you thinking about strategy when you're setting up as a dealer? That's a big thing to think about. Like if Ray, for instance, was going to set up at a show, right? You've got the Ultimate Collection, or you've got, 2 or 3 at Grail Ichiros that if somebody came with $250,000 and said, I'll take all 3, it's like, all right, thanks. Here you go. But then you have the other stuff for sale. So how did that end up playing out as far as, it went for day 2?
So way more foot traffic. We had pretty good foot traffic anyway. We were in like the second room, like the spillover room, but it was also the air conditioning was better in that room. So you had a lot more people coming in to like cool off. So you had people walk through. And what I mean by foot traffic for our table is more people just stopping and asking than chatting for a second. And once you have them for like 15 seconds, hey, yeah, oh yeah, that's a great car. Yeah. Do you have anything like that? Your collection? You start a little dialogue. That's all it takes. And then they start poking around, or like they start flipping through your box. They weren't going to, but now they do. And so it's just like that, giving them a pause. And I think that it was, and we also organized it so we had like basketball in one corner, some of Greg's football, some like golf or other stuff in like the bottom corner, then big card in the middle, and then radiating out from that some stuff that was nicer and more expensive, but a different tier, right? You're going from a 5-figure card in the middle to like maybe a 4 or like high 3 around that. So it grabs your attention, and then you can look around really quick. It's almost like I should have known this based on the way I scan tables, like I just said, right. But it didn't really click until I was like, oh, you need people to want to see something quickly, then stop and look a little longer, and then go, okay, what else is in there? I should actually look at every card now.
Yep. That's great thinking. I mean, again, thinking about strategy, it's such a great experience to set up as a dealer. I feel like, it's almost like when I was refereeing basketball and playing basketball, I feel like in order for you to criticize refereeing, you need to go do it once yourself. And in order to
100%
understand, what it's like to be a dealer and how hard it is. Because you hear them all say like, oh, I'm so tired. This is so draining. And in my mind, I'm like, dude, this looks awesome. But from the other side, you definitely realize that. So can you give me maybe a little bit of a summary? Like how much better did you guys do on day 2 compared to day 1?
I can tell you, Greg, from like selling just a couple cards day 1 to sold, I think 2 Larry Bird autographs, 2 tennis player autographs, like 4 or 5 basketball cards, all to one guy.
You must have brought Martina Hingis autographs.
Yep, it was 2 Martina Hingis to 2 guys who like met her when they worked at Circuit City or something. Were like so stoked to have them. They had chat. They actually, of all the people I sold cards to, and I didn't even sell them to them, it was Greg's cards. Of all the people we sold cards to, they were the most fun to talk to because their collection was so specific to like the people they met in person and like their stories they could tell about the person. It was just such a, like they're clearly, they bought those cards and was like, I turned to Greg and I was like, those cards are going to be with those guys forever. Like they're clearly never leaving those guys' collection. They have a very specific reason to want to get these cards because she came in to buy TV from them at Circuit City in Florida somewhere at some point. It's like, yeah, that's when you know they are collecting for like a reason that's because they truly want to have that card. And that just made it so fun.
I love to hear that. I mean, it's like when my experience buying that Duncan Robinson 101 at the National, I feel like those type of athletes, Martina Hingis is great, but at a card show, you're not expecting to find Martina Hingis cards. You're not expecting to find Duncan Robinson.
These guys were stoked. They were so pumped that he had 2 of our autographs there.
And they both got 1. That's so cool. I mean,
they bought them both.
Love it. I love it, man. Those are the type of stories that are going to make your experience. So we've got some more people in here. I do want to give a shout out again to Luke. Awesome to see you in here. Thank you. So I got a question now that we have some live viewers in here. What is it about a display case at a card show that makes you stop? I would love to hear what everybody has to think, because beyond like, oh, there's player A or B I'm looking for. Oh, Marc-Andre Fleury, right? But when I get the chance to go to the expo, hopefully next year at some point when my company sends me, and I get a chance to look at the table, obviously hockey is everywhere. So I can't just pick that like I used to at the National. But for me, it's going to be more of like, what is this one thing that makes you stop? And you talked about what you guys did to do that. You got to have a talking point card in there, and then maybe have some things around it, So I would love for everybody to share that. And while we're getting those answers, I want to do some more rapid fire. So let's do like 30 seconds or less. I'm just going to run through some things with the card show, and then we'll kind of see where we're at. So first question: what is the biggest takeaway that you had having sat on the other side of the table for the first time?
Yeah, it'll be two things. One, organize your case very well so that the cards in the case all relate to each other. So when people stop, they're seeing stuff that makes sense.
Okay.
Two, even as people are walking by, if you only glance for a second, say hey, like acknowledge them. That's something it's something sneakily I picked up from the guys next to us that actually set up at shows all the time. The guy was like, I do these like 4 months of the year out of my life is just at shows.
Okay.
And I kind of watched them. I was like, oh, he says hey to people. He's nice. Like, even if they're not totally interested, engage for a second. They take a second longer. So like, engage a little bit, but engage so that when they look down, you also have stuff organized in a way that makes sense. It's not chaos.
Okay. Awesome. Those are great takeaways. And I love that you talk about learning from other people that have done it before, right? You can't be naive and just try to do it yourself. You have to have a bit of obviously growth mindset, but being open-minded enough to see what's working for other people and try to learn from them. So yeah, that's awesome. Okay. Second question. What was the biggest surprise that you had from your experience as a seller?
The amount of mid 90s to early 2000s cards that were bought from me. Surprising amount. Because I brought some more modern stuff, thinking that was going to be the stuff people want. Jason Dominguez, guys that were in the playoffs. I had a bunch of that stuff out.
Okay.
Almost none of that got purchased. One Adley Rushman card rookie got sold. But the bulk of my cards that sold were late 90s, early 2000s. People were like actively looking for it. Did not really expect it. I thought we were going to be like on the outside there.
Wow. Okay. So the 90s were represented well. I mean, as we all talked about.
I like to think we represented them well.
You represented them well. Well, then I think Greg is onto something, right? Just like with the Essential Credentials podcast, it's very unique in its content. And if you were to be a 90s specific seller at shows, you're going to do very well because there's not much of it. The National had the most I've ever seen, including the guy that had the Pacific table. I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah.
One of Mike's former employees. But that's a really good point you made. All right. Next up is going to be, what if you were to do this again, which it sounds like you like the experience, what do you think is one thing you and or Greg both might do differently the second time around?
More than one display case. I actually don't think, unless you're going to have a lot of boxes of like 1 to 2 letter cards and have them really well organized, it's worth putting those out. People will flip through them, but they spend a lot of time at your table, and that does take up space. That's real estate of your table that's taken up. And if they're only there and they're not really, some guys would come by and only flip through $1 to $2 cards and leave with like 1 or 2 cards, but be there for like 20 minutes. That's a long time to just have somebody at your table. When you only have one, it's not that big.
Yeah.
So I would actually say have more cards that are slightly higher end, more display cases, and maybe only like 1 box of price as marked that's pretty decent stuff. And also, I would say if you're only doing one table, or if I'm only going to do one table where Greg and I split one again, it'll be really focused on what we put on the table. So you spot the 1 or 2 bug items, and then you go, oh, this table has like a theme. I know what I'm getting if I go to this table. And if somebody else asks me, I can tell them, oh, that table over there has that stuff.
Okay.
I think that's the way. If you're doing smaller, you can get more attention.
Okay. And I'm surprised. Yeah, I'm surprised. I was kind of figuring that you guys would end up having 2 cases, but now you know that for next time. Luke says a couple things. He says, I tend to go to a show with a goal in mind. I stop at cases that have cards in the same general area that I'm looking for. I'll stop at any table with 90s inserts. This is hard to find. But like you said, Ben, if you have a couple of 90s inserts in there, but most of your table is not 90s inserts, people are probably going to miss that. Like, obviously, you and me are going to notice the Power Alley die cut. Ooh, hey, whoa, hey, like, because they're such unique cards, right? But if you're looking for, some crazy 90s die cut that has no shine to it, it might be in there and you might miss it. So it's having, a thematic case or cases on your table. And then he also says, yeah, if there's no prices, I'll walk away. I mean, that is a given. But
Yeah.
we've also talked about, Greg and Alan and I, when we went to that first national, we did a lot of box diving, right? And the boxes that made us stay were the ones that were sorted 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, whatever. The ones with this randomized prices and stuff, like I'm already feeling less motivated. You got to organize it by team or by price or something along those lines.
Or like the ones that I spent a lot of time at with the national, I picked up a lot of good inventory. It was a $3 box, but they were all 92 to 99. So it wasn't like just random $3 cards. It was all 92, 99, and all baseball. And I could tell it was like somewhat curated. There wasn't like random base cards for $3, and there was like, oh, these are all 1 in 8 or rare inserts. Some stuff serial numbered. Like, I can tell there was thought put into the box, so I'm not just like flipping through 10,000 cards when I only care about 800 of them that I actually want to look at.
Yeah, great point. Great point. All right, final question in the rapid fire is, beyond the Martina Hingis interaction that you had with those two buyers, what would you say was like the most unique interaction that you had at the table?
I mean, that one far and away was the most interesting, because what a specific, like, they were there literally just to look for cards and like actually have a good time. It actually was kind of just nice to see that. Like, these guys couldn't care less about the money, didn't even haggle price. They were like, how much? Cool. Like, we're just stoked. It was like the most pleasant thing. The other interesting one was a guy that I have seen at many of the shows. He's a pretty decent sized dealer. And he came over to the table. Someone clearly had told him, and this was the second day, had told him we had like nicer 90s stuff. He came over to the table, was like, can I have your chair? Sat down and like went through my case and was like, that one, that one, that one, that one. How much for the Ichiro? Because I had like an Ichiro rookie in there, and I had the Jeter legacy in there. And he's like, that one, that one, that one, that one. And then flipped to my prices mark, picked out like every single one of like the common like gold finest decal edge out of 100 that I'd picked up over time, picked out every single one of those. Like, he knew exactly what was like prime time 90s cards, picked all those up. I was like, yeah, you're a dealer here. You're like, clearly you know what you're looking for. He's like, yeah, this is what people are asking for. So somebody told me you guys had some stuff, so I'm just buying it all from you.
Right.
And we just did a bulk deal and was like, cool, thanks. And I was like, I didn't have a price on the Jeter. I was like, this is the number I want. And just threw out a number that was like 25% more than the last PSA 9 comp. And mine's an SGC 9. And he was like, okay. So it was just like he was getting asked so much. He was like, somebody told me there's a table. I'm just going to go buy all of his stuff.
Nice. There you go.
It was just like crazy. It was a cool interaction, but also crazy that you just wouldn't expect that to necessarily happen.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. Great. So it sounds like, I guess to wrap it up, if you were to give this experience a rating out of 10, and this being your first one too, right? So probably no expectations going in. Where would you say this show ranked for you as your first one as a dealer?
I mean, 8 or 9, because I also wasn't there by myself. I had Greg. We had a playoff game on that we could stream on Max on Saturday, like during the day, which we had the game on. We could talk to people about that. I mean, having someone else there at the table with you does make a big difference. I could see it being very lonely if you're by yourself.
Oh man, no way. I would never.
Because you are talking to strangers, so you're talking to people, but there are times where it's slow for a minute, right? Like, people kind of aren't around, whatever, and just kind of twiddling your thumbs, whatever.
For sure.
Like, so I would say like 8, because I had a buddy there and we had a good time. Low expectations. We came out way farther ahead than I thought we would. Just we weren't. That was the other thing, is we set expectations very low. We're going to do the experience, sell something or not. And of course, after you do the first day and you're like, I kind of want to sell some stuff now. You get a fire. You're like, hold on, we could do this. Let's actually try the second day and see what happens. Yeah,
very good. Very good. Cool, man. Ray wants to know, other than your table, obviously, were there any other Ichiros that you saw around there?
Ray, I check every show. I check around and I ask all the tables that potentially will have Ichiros. I saw the same. I think it's like the 2018 Topps Dynasty Ichiro with like the piece of the ball numbered out of 5, the on-card auto. That card's been there every Nashville show. Price tag's like 40% higher than it should be. I mean, Ichiro is one of those you just. I actually was thinking you would see more because Otani is so big right now. That
Right.
people would just also bring Ichiro cards, and you like see some Nomo stuff pop up. It's just not. It's not a thing. You just do not see that many Ichiro cards, unless it's a current card. But they pulled like a super auto that's like a Leaf product or something. You'll see that in a case.
There will be after he's unanimous Hall of Famer. I don't think
that's the thing. Well, then we pay the premium for it.
Yeah, true. He brings out more cards. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are kind of holding on to him. Well, great. That's awesome, Ben. I'm glad we got to talk about your experience as a dealer. I mean, truth be told, I would love to do it myself. I don't know if I'd be able to at this point. I'd have to ask. I think it would be awesome. I mean, shoot, it would be great to fly somewhere and join some fellow collectors and experience it from the other side for sure. Yeah, exactly. As what Ray says here. But I think at this point, I know that I go into most shows knowing that the guys that I want are going to be a little bit overpriced because the dealers want you to, they always overprice things, and you want to work your way down and build up a relationship with that dealer. So I think it's all about the approach. Like if it's priced, 50% higher, then you just laugh and walk away. It's like, dude, come on, man. Seriously. But then again, it could be one of those like it's for sale cards in their collections. You got to respect that, right? We've all done it, I think, or would do it. Like just, Greg had his PMG Barry Sanders there. It's like, hey, if somebody wants to pay like $200,000 for this, go ahead. So.
I just remember there also were some one-of-one Ichiros that were the Topps Transcendent, the patch cards that were one-of-ones. But there's a bunch of different ones, and they were stickered at like 400, but you can get them on eBay for like 200. There's like any rare Ichiro gets overpriced at a show for the most part. Even when I do come across them, they're way overpriced. And same thing with Barry Bonds. I will say another thing for me, sitting behind the table and doing the show and then going and walking around. This was the first show in a long time that I didn't buy anything. Didn't walk away with a single card. I don't know if it's related to being behind the table and like getting a different vibe from the show and like a pulse. And then, I mean, I didn't dig through any boxes either, so I probably would have walked away with some $2-3 cards if I had. But I didn't do any display case cards, so I don't know if that's more restraint on my end, because there was one guy that had a very specific table that was cool. It was all like 2001 to 2006 ish or 5-ish, like Leaf certified and Donruss, like the cut autos and all of that stuff. Yeah, they're like the cut autos and like a piece of a jersey, and he had 2 Koufaxes, and one was numbered to 32, nice piece of the jersey and really clean cut auto from a check. I don't have a Koufax auto in my collection. It's kind of one thing I've thought I want to pick up. I kind of almost convinced myself, and then I started looking at the online price, and I was like, well, I don't need it right now. This would be just an impulse buy. So I kind of talked myself out of it, but it was almost because the guy was cool. And that's where I kind of, again, that was one of the things that happened early on at the show on Friday when I did my first walk around, was like, oh, there's something to getting people to talk with you. Because this guy roped me in. I got to talk like early 2000s cards a little bit. And I was like, I don't know, maybe I could buy it from him. Like I almost kind of got talked into like, I like this guy. I should buy this from him.
Car salesman.
Yeah. It was that kind of vibe, but it would have been totally on me because I just enjoyed the conversation. But I kind of took that away from the table, like, oh, get people talking to you, make it fun. And then sometimes they just want to buy a card for the experience and they like you and it's priced fine. They're willing to pay a little bit more than they would have from eBay, but.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Well, awesome to hear about all those experiences that you and Greg had. I'm sure Greg will maybe talk about it from his perspective on the next Essential Credentials that he and Alan do. But cool, man. Well, let's move on a little bit. I definitely want to share one thing that I think has been kind of a revelation. So if you have any questions about this, that would be perfectly fine, or anybody else does. I want everybody to imagine, what it's like if you were to be a collector. I think everybody that's watching right now, including, and then you and I are all very passionate collectors. We love this hobby. We've loved it since we were kids. We took breaks, came back. But the passion as for the hobby as an adult seems to grow. And just, you learn more about it, you have more money to spend. So those interactions start, blossoming and all these other things. And so imagine getting a job in the hobby, like in the industry, and seeing it from that side. Some people that I work with don't collect as much anymore, and some people collect more. And so for me, I mean, think about how great it's been to like do deep dives into these sets that have come out recently from Upper Deck and see how sick the cards look. When you do your case check, and hearing the person who built the set and designed the set, how much they love the cards. It's like, oh my gosh, it's going to be impossible not to buy more than I used to. And so that has been probably the hardest thing, is not buying cards that I don't normally collect. Although, I mean, I'll show you for an example. This is a 1 out of 400 packs case hit of Connor McDavid. This is a Palladium. Now, this is a PETG acetate card. This was mislisted, so I got it for $12. This was listed as Connor McDavis. Thank you
Oh man!
But this thing is sick, man. It's got beautiful rainbow foil on it. It's again acetate, and it's a case hit. And Metal Universe for me is one of those products, that is built like the '90s. You're building it to chase non-auto, non-nim cards. So I love that product.
Yep.
And I think I've bought 2 or 3 cards of players I normally don't collect, just so I can see these inserts in hand, right? All these case hit inserts. So, and also being friends with Billy, who built the set, and Jean Arena, which everybody knows, she designed or Jean McLeod, excuse me, who designed all the great '90s Fleer cards, Essential Credentials, and whatnot. I think there's so much that goes into wanting the cards now. So I guess I'm going to start with a question to you. Do you think if you got a job at Topps or Panini or Upper Deck that your collecting habits would increase? Like, would they change? Would they go higher? Do you think you would collect less? How would that affect you think?
I personally would be concerned about burnout for me.
Right.
Meaning, like, if I'm just in it all the time, I would almost feel like when I'm at home, I might want to break from it. There's that saying of like, and I have experience with this in my personal life, of they say, do what you love and you never have to work in a day in your life.
Exactly.
But really, if what you love becomes your work, then you almost need a break from it in your free time. Like, or you reach like a burnout phase. And it's actually something I had on my mind to ask you about, because the same guy that was sitting next to me, that we had great conversation, he was filling me out on some tips, or I was asking him some questions. He doesn't collect any cards at all, has no PC. It's literally just a job. And he's like, oh, I used to, but now I just do it all the time. And it's just a job in the shows. And I just don't have an interest in collecting any cards at all. It's just a job now for him.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, do you have any fear of that, Matt? And is there anything you're doing to like take breaks from it, so where you feel energized or excited about it again? Or is it just full force ahead right now because it's all new and it's not a concern yet?
Well, I will say that I noticed that, okay, I gotta make sure I say this correctly here. Because I don't want anybody getting the wrong impression, but not everybody at work is as passionate about the hobby as I am, right? Some people there love and are very good at doing what they do. But because they're in the industry, right, they don't have that same passion. I think for me, though, it hasn't dwindled in any way. I think it's almost funny, too, like when we do our case checks of products, which I think Billy's mentioned it many times in his interviews. Like, we do a case check of a product to make sure that everything's happening the way it's supposed to from the vendor side, and things look the right way. I'm like, the other day I was like opening metal with them, and I'm like, dude, this card is so sick. And my boss started laughing, like giggling to himself a little bit. Like, what do you, I'm like, are you trying to make somebody feel better? I'm like, no, I legit think this is awesome. Why don't you? And again, because it's like, well, I've been working here for 30 years. So
yeah, maybe that's a good thing though. You're probably a good reminder for them. Like, oh, this is supposed to be fun.
I'm trying to, man. I definitely, I definitely feel like there's probably not a lot of that in the industry. I think, again, it is a business, right? So we all have to think about that. But
right,
I want other people to look at stuff that, cards from sets that I've built and have that reaction. Like, dude, this is sick. because there's so much money attached in the hobby right now, so many things keep people from saying that, and it's really unfortunate. But I also collect so passionately the players that I collect. I think that's also pretty unique, right? You look at a guy like Ray who collects Ichiro as passionately as anyone collects a player. There's a lot of different people out there, but the people I find myself liking and as far as interacting with the most are the people who are just the same, have a similar level of passion for the hobby. And I try to maintain that as much as I can at work. And I will say, I've told some people at work, like, hey man, we got to continue being positive here. Like this, do you realize what you're doing right now? Like who you're affecting, like what people, how people are moved or not moved by what they're opening. I mean, this is a really big opportunity, and there's several factors that can affect that, but I am trying my best to not have like the burnout happen where if I stop caring about cards at home, how am I going to care about them at work? Right. And I think anybody that's listening will hopefully understand where I'm coming from. Would you want me to build a set of a player that you're going to collect or a card that you're going to collect around just like, I'm just building another set just to build a set because it's work? I feel like I would not want to collect those way more than if I knew the person building it was like legitimately excited and happy about what they're doing, you know?
Yeah. And to your point, like there is more money in the hobby. So there are people that are just in it for that part, but you still need to service the true core of what keeps the hobby alive and didn't just completely kill it off after the bankruptcies or the junk wax era was the people who truly collect. So those people still need to be cared about because the people who only chase after the Otanis and Wembanyamas, those people will come and go from the hobby. Like crypto, you get burned and then you're like, cards are dumb. Those people will come and go. But actually, to that point, I'll kind of ask you, sort of leading, but the people maybe you've talked to at work or maybe other people you know outside of the Essential Credentials world, have you noticed the people that maybe collect like a very specific player, like a Tim Salmon or something like that, are more passionate as a collector versus people that are kind of the 1A, you know, I'm now collecting Otani or like the biggest names or LeBron, that kind of thing. Have you noticed that? Like a difference between like how passionate they are as a collector?
Yeah, it's hard to measure that, but I will say, like, I wish Matt was here. I even messaged him, you know, the Astros collector.
Oh yeah.
Maybe, you know, looking at guys and gals that collect that are very passionate about a team or a player, I find like their satisfaction level tends to be higher because if you're collecting Otani PSA 10, there's no way that you are collecting just to collect. You are definitely protecting an investment with where you're putting your money. And I could completely respect that. I collect Marc-Andre Fleury. I think my money's going to be safe. I'm very honest. But do I think my Duncan Robinson and Tyler Glasnow money is safe? Probably not. But I don't care because I like the guys so much. So but I do think in general, if you were to, you know, take a poll, I think the answer would be, you know, like 75% yes, that those people get the most out of their collection. And those are the type of people that I'm trying to affect. You know what I mean? I as much as I respect, you know, building sets for the greater flipper people, because that's part of collecting. You got to respect it.
That's, you're building sets for breakers, flippers, dealers at card shows. They need like the big hot thing. That's sort of how the rookie card hype thing got started, right? That's where the money went, prospects and rookies. I mean, there was a guy at the show that I was talking to and he stopped at the table. I was like, oh, he stopped and asked about the Griffey Mantle. And he's like, oh, I'm kind of just looking for like Grail cards. And then also like, he said, quote, I'm a passionate Victor Wembanyama collector. I was like, for how long? He just had cards. You make that sound like I've been a Victor Wembanyama collector for the last decade. And that's just who I'm really passionate about. It's like, it's like, I don't know if I can buy that. It's just a weird thing to say.
He might
maybe you are.
Raised in France. I've known him. I've been following him since he was 12. Like, I'm sure there's those stories, right? But you're right. I get more excited when the oh my gosh, I gotta think, it's like William Eklund has a super collector on Instagram, and he's got a whole room dedicated to his cards, and his William Eklund's grandfather's been to his house. Like, That's the guy that I want to be like, hey, there's, not that I don't put people in sets. That's not my job. But when he does make it into a set that I've made and I see him go, oh, dude, the sick parallel of William Eklund, boom, this is awesome. Like, that's the guy that I get the most excited about. Now, obviously, I have to think about everybody when I'm doing my job, but those are the guys, the Rays, where they're like, oh, sweet, a new Ichiro. Yeah, it's modern, but if we were doing baseball, which of course we're not, but if we were, he'd be like, oh my gosh, yes, it's like a throwback picture. It's got a great this and that. So I think for me, I tend to start there because I do feel like those people are the most passionate. But of course,
they're going to stick around, but they might not spend the most money. That's where I can't imagine you're in a very tough spot where you're like, I want to serve these people, but they're going to collect some guy that his whole market cap is like, $10,000 for all of his cards.
Yeah, for sure. But you got to build stuff for everybody, right? Like, if we look at Series 1 that just came out, Billy did a great job of putting some great chase cards in there, but they're not going to be expensive, right? They're one every 4 boxes or one per case even. And some of those don't end up selling for a lot, but like knowing that they're really rare, that still motivates me to get really cool cards, right? So
I want that to come back. Rarity should add value again.
We just got to get away from this is just me speaking before I even got this job, but like I want to see less game used in autos. I want to see way less.
Yep.
And then when I do see them, I want them to be extremely limited. But and those drive sales, so it's tough to figure that out. But Ray says, with so much money, it's got to have a ton of pressure on card companies. I couldn't imagine that side of it. I mean, I'm not going to really speak to that necessarily, other than I know that our company is doing it in a way that pleases the most people. From what I can see, the most collectors, and we have people like myself that are really passionate about the hobby. There's a coordinator. I would love to have him on here at some point with us. I can't say his name because I don't know if we're supposed to say who they are, but he's a younger guy, but he loves collecting. Actually, he's gotten way worse as a collector since he started working there. And I love seeing his passion because, he's putting guys in checklists and he's keeping tabs on everything. And of course, he's got his team and his players, but it's great to know that there's people with that much passion there. And I can't speak for the other companies, but I'm going to guess that they don't. I'm going to do my only rant of the episode. If there's any other Star Wars collectors here, you'll understand this. Think about back in the 90s, you had like 2 or 3 parallels, and it was like, man, those are going to be sick and hard to find exclusives. And then you had maybe like a Pacific premiere date. You had a couple really tough ones, right? Well, this new Star Wars product is coming out, and it's called Galaxy Chrome. It's my favorite one. It's the only one I really
Yep.
He added like 4 parallels and took out the atomics, which were like the most popular parallel in the last 3 years. They just, everybody, because they were out of 150, so you can get them. So you'd see people grade them, keep them, whatever, or keep them raw, sell them, flip them, whatever. And now they're gone. And I'm just thinking, like, to make that decision to do more, right? Because again, like Ray's saying, there's pressure. You want to make more money, this and that. There's a limit to that, and I was really bummed to see them going that route. The company that does that set, you can look it up. Not only that, but a case went up to like $4,000, and it used to be like $2,500. And I was like, oh, it's gonna be my first year buying a case. I'm finally gonna do it. And then I'm gonna set up at a show down in San Diego and sell some Star Wars stuff. No, there's no chance now.
Right.
So I think you're always looking for that balance of what you're building and making it too expensive, right? And giving room for a variety of collectors. So, I'm always keeping all that stuff in mind. But man, when I saw that, I was just like, come on, man. We don't want the money to be the only thing.
Yeah, the only driver.
Yeah, it can't be. But I mean, what do you think? I mean, I'll have to ask your question back to you, right? I mean, don't you find the more specific player collectors to be more passionate collectors?
I do, and I think they generally stick around through hard times. They get more invested in really knowing the cards, the products, that kind of thing as well. Like they can actually converse the full scope of the hobby better.
Right.
And the other reason I brought that up is one of the frustrations I heard multiple times at the card show was, man, I can't find the guys that are like tier 2 or tier 1B players. Like they aren't even in cases. Like I'm talking even level of like for baseball, like Bryce Harper rookies. can't even find that. People don't even bring those to shows because they don't really sell. Like I had a Bryce Harper Prospect Auto that I put in the case, and people are like, "Oh, you actually have one?" Like this is the only Bryce Harper Prospect Auto at the whole show.
Yeah,
it's like,
that's crazy.
Like people, it's like if it's not tier 1A, it wasn't there, and you heard this frustration. People that are clearly like more passionate collectors, like that guy was a Phillies guy. It's like, I'm looking for Philly stuff. No Trey Turner anywhere. He's a legit star in the MLB. Trey Turner, big deal Philly. Bryce Harper, I would say tier 1A, but he's not Ohtani level, so no one brings him to shows. I heard like frustration about real collectors not really being able to find their guys in cases. Like it was just, if it's not the best of the best, what's hot right now, we're not bringing it to the show.
That's so unfortunate, man. That's the kind of type of stuff that I want to see. I want to see all the great players being represented. And I asked you this question on the phone the other day. I said, what do you think these shows would look like in the late 90s, early 2000s? Yeah, you had McGuire and Sosa and Griffey probably in every case, but there was still the variety, right? Always going to be variety. You saw guys like Larkin, you know, you saw guys like Edgar Martinez, Randy Johnson. You saw,
dude, finding guys that are like legit Hall of Famers like Randy Johnson, Larkin at shows. Good luck. Good luck. Like legit. If you're a Paul Molitor guy, don't even go to a show. Yeah, well, I had one Paul Molitor autograph in my case, but I think I might have the only one. Been it. Yeah, but if you're looking, I mean, Paul Molitor, 3,000 hits, Hall of Fame. You're not finding his cards at a show unless it's like a 2022 Ginter Chrome Super, right? That someone just randomly pulled, and it's going to be some random card in the case that you wouldn't find.
Yeah, it's really, really unfortunate, man.
But to your point, in the 90s, you would find like if anybody pulled a Diamond Producers of any player, that was going straight into the case at the show. It was a Mo Vaughn that's going into the case, you know. So you were getting this crazy variety because people were looking for like the rare inserts. They were trying to complete the rare sets, the rare parallels, that kind of thing.
For sure. So very different times, man. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, all those Otanis and Wembanyama's just getting bought and flipped. I mean, it's just really unfortunate how that's going, but it's the reality. You know, I'm excited to see what the Expo is like, to see if there's more variety. Obviously, Crosby, Ovechkin, Gretzky, McDavid, those four are pretty much going to be in every case. If there's a goalie, it's going to be Patrick Roy, Dominik Hasek. Fleury is unfortunately kind of beyond that. He's in that same Bryce Harper type realm. But anyway.
Like veteran hero should be tier 1A that's out there all the time, but for some reason isn't.
It's ridiculous, man. But anyway, so like I was saying, and like you asked, I feel like the passion is still very, very high, if not higher. I mean, think about how cool it is to see images of cards before they come out. You know, like obviously we see them on the on Facebook that Upper Deck puts out. You see that, you see your guy in the checklist, and you know your friends that you haven't worked on them.
But then the anticipation versus a collector of waiting for the image of the card. You see the design, you see them in the checklist, and you're like, oh, what picture did they choose? So I actually asked you, is there any like upcoming releases you're stoked about, like Upper Deck stuff that you're excited is coming out soon?
Well, Metal Universe just came out. I got to show this one other card because this was like my big chase card. This is the I love it because it's a little bit of a Willy Wonka reference. Billy built an insert set called Goose Eggs, but the parallel is called the Golden Goose Egg. So if you've seen the OG Wonka movie, you'll know exactly where my reference point is for that. So here's the Marc-Andre Fleury. This is a Golden Goose. I mean, does this not look like it belongs to the 90s? Like,
that is so exactly what you would expect.
Like, and you know exactly who designed this. There's no question about this because this is something she would have put in a product in the 90s or early 2000s. So
I would love to see that. Yeah.
Big shout out to Gene and Billy for collaborating on this. But to have like the gold holofoil at the bottom and have it at a 25, be a goalie insert, this was it, man. This was definitely it. So Metal Universe was it for me. I wish I had one more.
That's a big one.
Yeah, that's a huge card. The guy I bought it from in Canada there, he was great to work with. Other than that, yes, there's one that has been announced that I can talk about. It's coming out. Nope, can't say that. Almost caught myself.
Okay. I was like, no, something that's already listed on upcoming releases that you're excited about.
This is good practice. Okay, this is great because I think everybody that's in here knows the set. Everybody knows the set that the first Essential Credentials were in. 97 EX 2000. That was a 2-card pack and all this. You know, they had the dual front and back stuck together with the acetate clouds in the middle. Worst picture of A-Rod of all time. I've told Gene that in person. Like, what the heck were you doing with that? Or the photo department, why'd you let him choose that? It was on the box. Like, we got to do it right. But the hockey set coming out in January, it's got essential credentials. It's got some other, obviously some newer parallels. You're right. You got to combine the new and the old together. But the essential credentials out of, I believe they're 50. It could be either 50 or 99. It's been announced and everything, and it's coming out later. But I am super, super excited to add a Marc-Andre Fleury essential credentials because he's never had one, no matter how many.
Oh, no way. Okay.
No, he's never had one. So for me, that's going to be amazing.
I did see that on the upcoming release list when I was looking at it earlier. I was like, oh man, they're actually going back and doing that, like the 2000 version.
Yeah. Well, because there was an issue with Fleer and hockey in the NHL at the time. It was supposed to be done. They were going to do that set in the 90s, which, I mean, think about how that would have been. You have such credentials, Wayne Gretzky's and Messier and all the great 90s players, Patrick Waugh and Hasek. But to have it, with modern players in there is pretty freaking sick. And I am super, super excited to see how collectors receive that, because let me just say that 2 cards in a pack is going to be something nobody's ever seen in modern hockey. And I mean, have we ever had that? So
I don't know if hockey's had that. So that's going to be a new thing for hockey, because baseball's had that. 5-star.
Oh,
2 cards in a pack.
Yeah, right.
Prior to that, we had like Strata was like 2 cards in a pack. So we've had that in baseball for a while. Granted, those usually have like an autograph or something on them. Mm-hmm. So to like 2 cards in a pack, going back to the old school, like the chase kind of thing, 2 cards in a pack is going to be, I'm personally excited about it. I think that's cool to like go back to this work. This was a big deal, and you should be excited about just the true design and the checklist of the cards. Like, this is a set you should want to put together in a binder.
Well, this is definitely one that I want to have like a base set, and then go get my guy if in the set once it comes out. I think that's going to be super, super fun. But anyways, I will say that one. I'm going to stick with that one for now. Obviously, I can't talk about anything that I know that I'm going to be working on, not yet, until it gets officially announced. But it's slowly figuring some things out and having a great time there. And if anything, my passion for collecting has grown, if not stayed the same.
I want it to be that way. Make sure there's balance in your life so that it stays that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, if you have a friend that's working in the industry, you want them to be passionate about what they're doing. You don't want a person building sets that just kind of whatever. I'm just doing a job, and there's always going to be that. But for me, that doesn't bode well for me building really fun things. And I think if you had, if you were working at Topps and I knew you were going to be building sets that Tyler Glasnow had potential to be in, I mean, I would want there to be something a little bit different. Like, what are you going to add to it? Like, imagine getting Stadium Club and that being your first set you ever work on.
Overwhelming.
Dude, pressure. What's that?
I said overwhelming.
Yeah, but you'd have to like, step up to the plate, man. And you got to find
flipping through thousands of pictures per player to like figure out the right shot. And again, that's one where I saw that's a scheduled upcoming release, and I saw the design.
Weeks from now. Yeah.
The design I don't like. It's like,
you're not liking it?
I don't like the border they did with the name. I don't like the font. There's a couple of things there. I'm just like,
let's take a peek here. Let's take a peek. We'll get some user input on this.
It's an example for me of photo driven. Just don't do too much with like adding a border or anything that's blocky or covers up the photo.
Okay.
It's no bleed, no border.
I'm going to pull up the picture. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yep.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, here's a picture of Bryce Harper. I'm going to share this for everybody. What is everybody's opinion on this? Because Stadium Club has been the one set that I have been the most excited to.
Oh, every year I wait to see what Ichiro they're going to do and what picture they're going to use.
Right.
Why do the color with the dark border on the bottom of the picture?
Yeah, that's not neat. This looks like a Series 1 card almost, or it almost looks
and
like,
then also the font choice of the Bryce, like the cursive, is like a cheap it's a cheap font. I don't know
I
how else
mean,
to put it.
I'm a fan of script, but I would have liked to have
Me
had it
too.
with
But
no
why that
border.
cheaper? Yeah, no
Yeah,
border to put the name on there. Like to me, this is like too. It looks like it does look like a Series 1 type of design to me.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
if you took what they did on the bottom and just extended that gray border all the way around, you would say that's a Series 1 card.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and that's the thing too. You know, you're always looking for that balance of what is too much and what is too little, as far as making sure it changes. But I would have just loved script on the bottom for the nameplate, and that be it. You
Yeah,
know,
actually, if you just took away the gray airbrush stuff and just had the name, even if it had that pill, I'd be okay with that even.
yeah, the gray
But just
airbrush
leave it-
definitely makes it feel different. You're right. Yeah,
and
not as big of a fan. Although, again, it is a photo-driven set. So if the
yes,
photo is good enough, then your design kind of is a mute point, especially with Stadium Club. So maybe, you know, like again,
and
I
maybe
already
this is gonna look sick. The chrome version, the chrome refractor of this will look great. Who knows?
right, because they got rid of Stadium Club Chrome, but they're doing a whole Chrome subset within this release that I think is the full-blown set, more or less. So it's gonna,
so. This is an
be
interesting thing that I wonder if Upper Deck is going to be kind of maybe doing the same thing. So Topps is doing the same thing with Allen and Ginter. So Allen and Ginter is coming up. They used to do Allen and Ginter Chrome separate release every year. They are now
right.
rolling all the Chrome cards inserted into the regular Allen and Ginter. So like an Allen Ginter Chrome base is like 1 in 8 packs. A refractor is even rarer than that. And then the color refractors become like super long shots.
Well,
rolled into the base set.
Did that though, because in the past you would only have like a 50 set checklist of Stadium Club Chrome cards, and then you get refractor, orange, green.
So it is a subset for Ginter as well. It's like only 100 of the cards are actually have the Chrome version.
Okay.
So it's like whatever 350 cards in the set, and only 100 have like the Chrome.
Yep, gotcha. As far as what we do, we don't have like, you know, I mean, we only have one, O-Pee-Chee and O-Pee-Chee Platinum, right? Those are obviously different checklists because it's a smaller base set in O-Pee-Chee Platinum compared to O-Pee-Chee, which is like 700 or 600 cards or 500 or whatever. I mean, it's a huge set. Clearly, I haven't worked on it yet, so I don't know the specifics. But and we put the preview cards in O-Pee-Chee, right? We put the O-Pee-Chee Platinum preview cards in there with some cool parallels, and so that is a way of kind of seeing like what the design is going to look like ahead of time, which is pretty cool in my mind. And I will say, man, the next O-Pee-Chee Platinum release looks freaking, both of them, man, both sets look amazing. But
nice.
I don't think we've ever thought of doing that. I think you want to stay true to like what your brand is. You want Chrome sets to stay Chrome, and you want non-Chrome sets to not be Chrome. And playing with both of those ideas can or substrates can be tricky, because then collectors like, wait, hold on a second, what's happening here? So I think they're very.
I agree with that, and I'm not sure if this is a good idea for Topps or not. Like I would say I don't like that version. Like I would rather just pay the price for the Chrome product and everything is Chrome, and like I'm expecting that.
I'm with you, man. I miss Stadium Club Chrome. I thought it was great. Every year Tyler Glasnow was in it, dude. The red refractor was like the big chase, or the super. Obviously, everybody wants that, but that's without being said. But just the refractors look freaking awesome. The first year they did it is still my favorite, but there is, again, the full checklist comes in Chrome. I don't know how they're going to deliver this in packs. I mean, building that set is going to take forever. So I mean, it's going to be really interesting. Ray had something he said here. He says,
that distracted me. I saw that and was like, ooh.
Yeah, it'd be cool if they had redemptions for a special complete set. Some player images, same player images, but a completely different design, anywhere from 5 to 25. That hasn't been done in years. That would be really sick. I mean, for me too. Topps is doing something that I absolutely love. They did it in Series 1 and 2, and I haven't seen one in Extended, so maybe they didn't do it. But the borderless cards that are just the image.
They call it like the true photo.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. The true photo variation. Tyler had one in Series 2. Those are sick, or Series 1, excuse me. Those are amazing. I love it. Like letting the picture speak for itself. Like just the picture. Do more things on the back, whatever you got to do. I'm a huge fan of that, right? Because ultimately, if we're going to try to add value to base cards eventually, you got to have sick photos, right? Like some of my favorite base cards of goalies are from 90-91 Upper Deck. It's all about the photo, man. And so that's something that I think is always going to be super important.
That reminds me, one card I picked up I didn't get it in the mail yet was I picked up the redemption. They were like one per case of 1994 Upper Deck, where you could pull a redemption for like the full subset of this
Oh, nice.
specific insert. And it was like 25 or 50 cards. And I bought the Griffey of it, but it was one per case, and you got this like redemption for that subset of
Oh,
cards.
nice.
And
Okay.
then one per like 10 cases, you got the Electric Diamond redemption, and they would send you an Electric Diamond set. And
Nice.
I found
Sick.
somebody that listed for like really cheap the Griffey Electric Diamond redemption for the subset.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so Ray mentioned that. I was like, I literally just bought that card from 1994 of Griffey. Like just
That's
bought
great.
a redemption like that.
That's
But
great,
that would
dude.
be fun to see like redemptions of sets or something come back in some way, because that's what a
Yep.
fun thing to chase.
Yep. I agree. That's all I can say. I agree. I think it would be great. I think it would be
I'm
great.
always reading your answers now. Like, is he hinting at something happening?
Well, you don't collect hockey, and I don't think anybody that's watching does either. So maybe at some point, if I do some hockey specific content, I have to be a little bit, super specific or not, because they can read into stuff. But yeah, I'm all about trying new things. I guess I'll leave it at that. I'm all about trying new things, and
Yeah.
whether it's going to happen or not, I don't know, but we'll find out. Well, I guess to kind of wrap it up, I wanted to touch on one thing. One thing, now that I'm kind of set up here, I'm getting closer to being set up. One thing I love doing, and I think we all kind of fell in love with early on before COVID, was just making card videos. I think there's some people that do a really good job. I think Ken's Cardboard, he's one that I absolutely love. He does one little intro, and then he shows cards and shows dollar cards, shows $50 cards, and everything else in between. Nate obviously does an amazing job. He just showed off a really cool card that he got in, Barry Bonds, that he had been looking for 20 years. I mean, that kind of stuff is still really exciting for me to watch. So I definitely want to get back to doing that. I just need to build a space in the card room where I can film that. So I have some fun ideas of how I can do it. So I'll get your opinion after the show's over. But just want to throw it out there to you too. I think it would be great to do some kind of a collab or something where we're kind of showing off our collections and telling the stories. I think those are what really make us collectors, is our stories behind it. So I would definitely like to get back to that. Ray, I'm going to ask Ray here because he's in here, and Luke as well. Have either of you or both of you still doing card content? Because are people still watching that? I guess that's the last question I want to ask you for tonight's show, Ben. Are you still consuming that kind of content? If you see a 5-minute video from anybody that you follow that showing off new pickups or just showing off a specific type of cards, are you still interested in that kind of stuff?
I am. I'm definitely interested when it's somebody that I know, or I've gotten to like learn their content and they pick up something big. Like I'm even more excited for them. And then the only other kind of content that's, if you're looking like 3 to 5 minutes, there's like the Real Card 27 guy who like do a deep dive onto why this card is so valuable, and it'll be something about the edge casey or like a bankruptcy thing with Pinnacle, like something that's like interesting that I kind of already know, but it's cool to see that someone's actually taking the time to make the content.
Yeah, for
like
sure.
We already know the history there, but somebody actually took the time to make the content. I don't know. I do a couple podcasts, but I'll be honest, I think there's like a little bit of a lack of the content that's like, here's why I got this card. This is what it means to me. Like the story behind this card for my collection. Like, here's my tie to the card. I don't, and maybe I'm just not following the right people, but I don't actually see a lot of that. And it's something, I'll be honest, I haven't made either. So I can't blame anyone else for not doing it.
Right. Okay. Well, I will definitely, I've been logged into my hockey account lately, which follows my Instagram account. So I will make sure to go subscribe to you, Luke. Is it Luke? Can you put the name of your YouTube channel down there? I assume it's Red Lake Collector. I don't know if you have a different thing you post under, and then go find Ray's as well. Well, that's good to know, because I think that's really important. They're a really good storyteller.
Ray's put in the legwork for the website. So if you want to know anything about an Nitro card, just go to the website and just flip through there.
Yeah.
Ray's put in the work. Don't make him do more work.
Well, he's made videos long before that. We ever did the podcast. I found him and a few other guys, and he does a good job of showing some different pickups. But yeah, good point. Good point. All right. Well, Ben, this has been a fun one. Again, thanks for sharing your experiences as a dealer. That's something that a lot of people haven't experienced, but I think a lot of us would like to try and see what it's like. Really cool that Greg was repping the podcast. And so hopefully you both get a chance to do it again. It was great, great questions today as well. It's always fun to share some experiences at work. I feel like we maybe need to do a segment where we do like a view from the industry or something like that, so I can think about what to talk about each week. But any closing thoughts before we wrap it up here?
I hope some of the thoughts I had about being on the dealer side were helpful. I know I will be doing it again. I think at the very least I'm going to be doing the 3 shows that they do a year here in Nashville. So at least I'm at those shows. There's enough value add there, like being set up, getting a pulse. And it's kind of a good cadence, right? Like every 3 months is what's going on? What are people kind of looking for? What's the vibe? Am I getting any trend here? Like the 90s thing was a clear, different trend that I hadn't picked up, or I wouldn't have picked up if I just gone to the show and left.
Right. No, that's great.
So
that's great.
There's some value out there. Like it's worth doing it. And if you have some smartly laid out inventory and you communicate with people, you can sell it and actually do pretty well.
Right. Okay. Well, great. I think you shared some great tips. Hopefully people will come around and watch this at some point and maybe get a little inspired or change their approach as a dealer. And yeah, it's been great chatting with you. And obviously Ray and Luke, we both really appreciate your
you guys rule. Thanks for being in here.
Activity in the comments. Yes. And to anybody else that's watching, we sure appreciate you coming and checking it out. Always looking for suggestions on what you would enjoy on these side credentials. I think the big thing we've talked about is getting a third person involved. So our next episode, I'm going to work hard on getting, Ray or Luke or Matt in here and do some, questions back and forth with 3 people. That's always exciting. So anyways, have a great night, everybody. Hope you have a great week as well. And we will see you next weekend. Take care.
See you guys.